Um, all right, so thank you guys so much for coming on with us. It's so exciting to see so many people interested in production. My name is Heather. I am a production coordinator here in Buffalo. Jazlyn and Robin are joining me today for this. So we're going to be talking, well, one will explain a little bit about who we are, our journey to the production world. We'll give you guys a breakdown of what happens in the production office, the positions, as well as doing a little bit of a Q&A like we mentioned. If you think of any questions as we're talking, just feel free to type them into the chat so we can reference those at the end. And then, yeah, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So just to kick things off, I'll start with myself. So I've been working in the industry for about 10 years now. I started right after I graduated college. I went to school for communications at Niagara University. I didn't study film. I did take some production classes, but I mostly was just in communications. And so I got started with Fisher-Price, which I'm sure you guys all know what Fisher-Price is, but they actually have a headquarters in East Aurora. And so I got hired as their production assistant for their commercials. And so I did that for about 6 months. I got a lot of experience. And after that, I got a job on MTV's The Jersey Shore. So I moved to New Jersey, had a very crazy few months. And then I moved to New York, and I worked as a production assistant in New York for about 2 years. I worked on shows like Law and Order, SVU, Orange is the New Black. I did different TV shows, movies, kind of everything. And I did it for, like I said, about 2 years. And then I decided to move back home after that. And when I came back to Buffalo, I got in touch with HGTV and I started to work with them. So they obviously do reality television. So I started producing different shows with them, House Hunters, different travel shows. And I worked with them for about 3 years. And then in 2017, I got offered a production coordinator job on a indie film here in Buffalo called Coldbrook, which is where I met Jazlyn and Robin. And that was my first job in the office. So I kind of really jumped in as a coordinator. And I've been working in the office ever since. I joined the union, so production coordinating is now what I do full time. And I most recently coordinated the Buffalo unit of Nightmare Alley, which is a massive movie that I'm sure you guys will all see, hopefully, if we can never go to movie theaters again. And yeah, that kind of brings us to today. Jazlyn, if you want to go next.
Yes, so hi everybody. My name is Jazlyn Porter. I grew up close to Buffalo. I grew up in Niagara Falls, New York, which is, right next to Buffalo, only 20 minutes away. And I attended Buffalo State College. I didn't go to school for film either, but I did go similar to Heather. I went for communication studies. And I kind of always had a dream of working in the industry, I didn't expect it to be like this. But I think it was a year after I graduated college, I was kind of, trying to figure out how I would get into the industry. And at the time, Buffalo actually had a PA seminar. So it was put on by, I believe it was the Buffalo Film Commission, right, Heather?
Yes.
Yeah, so they actually held a PA seminar, and there was, about 50, 60 people there. And it was like a full day, 8-hour learning experience about what it's like to just kind of be a PA. And so about a month or two after that, I got an email saying that there was a small movie, which was Coldbrook, coming to Buffalo. And at the time, since it's a small movie, they were looking for interns. So I went into this group meeting, and then I got a call a little bit later asking like if I would be interested in being the assistant to the director. And of course, I wasn't going to say no. I said yes. And it wasn't paid, but it didn't matter. It's, sometimes you just got to get your foot in the door. So that was in like May of 2017. And so I've been working in the industry since then consistently. That's all I do. I've worked as an office PA after that. secretary. I did a small like assistant coordinator job with Heather. A lot of my jobs have been with Heather. And for the past year, I've been working as a producer's assistant, but I've traveled a little bit through like Heather. I've worked in Buffalo. I did a NBC TV show called The Enemy Within in Jersey for about 8 months. I worked in Atlanta back in 2018 on a Fox TV show called Star, which was a Lee Daniels production. And I'm actually back in Atlanta now working on a Sony film. So I'll probably be here for about a year, and I'm working as a producer's assistant. And me, Robin, and Heather all got to work together on Nightmare Alley, and then we also worked on A Quiet Place too, which was filmed completely in Buffalo. So we've done a lot of projects together.
Robin?
Hi, everyone. I'm Robin. I'm originally from Long Island. I came to Buffalo in 2015. I went to Buffalo State College and I majored in television and film arts. I got my start on Coldbrook, like Heather and Jazlyn both talked about. I was still going to classes at the time, and our professor actually reached out, I think it was to the Film Commission, and said, are there any internship opportunities? Because we have a lot of students that want to get involved and get some hands-on experience on set. So I went in for a group interview, like Jazlyn said, and me and a few of my friends worked in the production office on that for, I think it was like about a month. And then we actually got to get some on-set experience too, which was cool because you don't normally get to do both. It's normally one or the other. So that was a really awesome experience. And the first time I ever even stepped on like a big set before. So I learned a lot from that experience, and it was unpaid, but I think making those connections is what really got me to where I am now. Because right after that, there was an independent film that came to Buffalo called The True Adventures of Wolf Boy, and I worked as an intern in the office for that as well. After that, 2018, I graduated in May, and right after that, I went on to a movie called Crown Vic. It wasn't a big movie, but it wasn't a small movie. It was like in between. And that was for about from May to like September. And then I ended up going to New York City after that to work on the reboot of a show called Murphy Brown. So I got to kind of stay at home since I'm from Long Island and I'm not that far from New York City. So that was a cool experience getting to work in New York City, because even though I grew up right next to it, I never had any experience working in the industry over there. So I met a lot of new people that way, and I learned a lot of experience about how New York City is different than Buffalo, because obviously New York City has a lot more money than Buffalo, even though we're starting to get up there. So I learned a lot about how like TV works, because I only had film experience before. And then after that, I ended up coming back to Buffalo, and a lot of people are like, why would you go back to Buffalo? But I was like, I really love the tight-knit community here, and everybody's really supportive of each other. So I came back here, and then I ended up getting a job on A Quiet Place Part 2. I started out as an office PA, and then I worked my way up to become the secretary on that. And then after that, I worked on Nightmare Alley with Jazlyn and Heather as a production secretary.
Yeah, and just to kind of go off of what Robin said, Buffalo has a huge film community now. You guys are entering it at like one of the best times. I know some of you have probably heard about the studios that are being built. And so within a year, we're going to have major television shows, movies coming into town, which is, part of the reason why we wanted to do this, is because we are going to need lots of people. And we have about a year to train people to get them to the point where, we can just start, doing all of these jobs. And it's important to us to keep the jobs local and in Buffalo, and, not just bringing in New York people or LA. So we're going to get into now a little bit of the production breakdown of what exactly happens when a movie or a television show comes to town. So I'll kind of kick that off here with the hiring process before what we call prep begins. So when a movie or a television show, we usually do movies here, but when they get started, obviously there's financing involved, and after that's kind of sorted and there's producers, those producers hire the UPM. or the production manager. They're both the same position. You'll sometimes hear UPM. That just means that they're in the DGA, which is one of the unions. It's the Directors Guild Union, or if it's a non-DGA project, they're just called the production manager. But either way, both jobs oversee the entire production. And like I said, they're hired by the producer. After the producer hires the UPM, that person then hires me. And this can happen very, very quickly. I think it's probably why, you know, a lot of you, by the time you guys hear about a movie or whatever in Buffalo, it's already been staffed. It's because it happens so fast. Sometimes I'll get a phone call and they'll say, you know, can you come to Ohio tomorrow? You know, like that's how fast it happens. So once I get the call about a project, the UPM and myself, we start to find an office space. So I think sometimes people don't realize all that goes into starting a production. It's essentially like a brand new business. So we don't even have an office. So we find an office space, we get a lease sorted out, and at the same time, I hire my team. And so once we have a place to go and I have a team, then we can start prep. And Robin will tell us more about prep.
So prep usually starts about 4 to 12 weeks before filming. So it's a month or two, sometimes maybe even 3 or 4, depending on how big of a scale the movie is. And like Heather said, we have to find an office space, which is usually entirely empty. We just have the actual space and the lease to use the space for the allotted time we're there. So we have to rent furniture, and that means we have to sometimes open an account with a local company and kind of get different quotes on what the best deal would be. We have to start setting up individual offices for people that are going to be coming in from the crew. So like we'll be there early, but sometimes the director's in the office and they come in a little bit early, but not as early as we do. So we got to make sure all their offices are set up with all their chairs and desks and tables and any other office supplies they might need. And putting up signs is a big part of it. It sounds like something that's so simple, but it's a lot of, you got to get in the Word document and you got to make it look right. You got to get it approved and you got to put it up. And it's a lot of using, whether it's Microsoft Word or whatever you're using, familiarizing yourself with formatting and organizing and things like that on the computer and documents. Furniture, sometimes they want couches and chairs in the office and lamps. Sometimes you'll have to go to IKEA. I don't know, that happened on one job. I don't know if that's going to happen going forward, but lamps is another thing. It's just like all the little things that you wouldn't think of going into a job, like starting brand new, like Heather said, like opening a brand new business. Another thing is buying office supplies. We've used WB Mason in the past, but just setting up an account and establishing relationships with these vendors. And the good part is, like, once you establish a relationship with the vendor, especially if they're local, you can kind of continue to reach out to them moving forward. Renting printers and scanners is the similar idea of, if there's one place that you've worked with before, you know, you can figure things out with them. You got to get them delivered. You got to organize for when they're all going to be set up and dropped off. Opening accounts with vendors. That's, like I said, with office supplies and with the printer, just making a new account, because you're going to have like a new email, like for a Quiet Place, like AQP2 email. So you're going to have like AQP2 account set up with WB Mason, AQP2 account set up with the printer company, and getting all of that set up. So once you have to start ordering more things, it's just a matter of signing in. You already have the payment information involved. And that also applies to ordering equipment and expendables. Expendables are things that the crew will need to use, but they will go through it and it will eventually just go in the trash, like tape and other things like that. Equipment is normally rentals. It's not like the camera department is responsible for ordering their own equipment. It's actually the production office that communicates with the camera department, and then we communicate with the vendor what they need, and then we make sure that gets set up for this delivery date, this delivery date, this delivery date. And then we also have to catch those packages as they're coming in, so we can make sure that they get to the department that they need to get to. It's also a lot of traveling crew and cast. The travel coordinator, that's a job that Heather is going to talk about more later, is responsible for getting everything booked through usually a travel agent, and then creating this memo that has all the travel information and sending that out to everyone. So it's not everyone is responsible for booking their own individual trips. It's this one person is doing all the work and then sending out all that information to them. Organizing rental vehicles, that's another thing that we're responsible for, is everyone that's coming in from out of town, they're going to need a way to get around. And if they're flying in, we have to make sure we provide them with a mode of transportation, and that also goes through us. So a lot of things that people at first glance would think maybe everybody's taking care of this themselves, most of it goes through the production office. Packages is another big part of it. Like, as soon as we receive any packages delivered to the office, we have to make sure we write down all of that tracking information. So in case anybody asks, did my package land? We can say, yes, here it is, send them an email. We keep track of everything. It's very important to be organized, because since so much is going through us, we have to make sure we know where everything is. As soon as anyone asks, where is this thing? We can say, we have it written down right here. Here's everything you need. And building the prep schedule, that's important. So everyone that's in the office and sometimes even out of the office is on the same page as to what's going on. So it'll say like, the director is traveling in this day. We're having a production meeting this day. So it's just like building a whole schedule for everyone to see exactly what's happening throughout the course of the first few months before the crew is starting to get there. And I know that is a lot of information, but this is me trying to sum it up in a very brief overview to get all the information out now, and we can always dive deeper if you guys have any questions.
Yes. Yeah, so I mean, as I'm going to take over the filming process, but kind of just going off of what Robin said, you know, all communication goes through the office. So no matter what department, everybody goes through the office, which is why we do so much, where our hands are literally in every single department. So that's why it's hard to really say everything that we do, because it is a lot. So once we start filming, things kind of change a little bit as far as what happens in the office. So once filming begins, the office staff stays in the office. There's obviously a separate shooting crew. So the main thing that happens is the office will kind of change their shifts. So it's important that the office is always running during shooting. So obviously, sorry, I have a dog. She's under here. So it's the shooting schedule depends on, you know, if it's, you know, a night shoot. Some movies, you know, they'll do more of like, they'll start at 10 a.m. So our schedule kind of just depends on the shooting schedule. But no matter what, the office is always in before filming starts, before the day starts, and we're in after the day ends. So there's always going to be people there to, you know, send things to set. That's a big thing that we do. So everything that is on set comes from the office. So call sheets, sides, if there's a new one-liner, scripts, if we get new equipment in, Expendables, the office has to send all of that stuff to set. So it's a lot of organizing that. We also get a lot of things from set. So we get daily paperwork, we get start work, we get contracts, all different kind of agreements for locations. So we have to organize that. We have to, you know, scan it into our onto our drives. So it's a lot of going through all of that. And we also get a lot of last minute things that happen. So sometimes they are emergencies that are, you know, really bad. Sometimes it's just equipment that they ran out of or forgot. And sometimes we need it that day. Sometimes the schedule will change well, not sometimes, it happens a lot. The schedule will change in the middle of shooting, or the script will change. And so it's up to the office to, you know, once the color changes of the script or the schedule, you know, we have to print new scripts for everyone, new schedules. Since we communicate with everyone, we have to distro all of that out. And so we have to email everyone on the crew, all of the cast members, the studio, if there's a studio involved, people's agents. It's a lot of constant communication with everyone. Otherwise, people won't have the information. If the office doesn't send out the call sheet, then people don't know what time to show up for work. So it's very important that we are always on top of, you know, everything that's changing. It's very fast paced once filming starts. It's fast paced in prep too. But during filming, it's very fast paced, and it's important to work together because our shifts are different. We're not, you know, whereas during prep and wrap, we're kind of on the same schedule. During filming, we're all working different shifts because the office kind of becomes 24/7. Let me see if there's anything else I missed. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's mainly it. Like I said, it's a lot of communication, distro, and just kind of being, you know, bridging the gap between the studio, you know, and the people on set. Yeah, Jazlyn, do you want to take over wrap?
Yes. So as Heather and Robin have mentioned, you know, you don't just start shooting a movie. So you have this prep, and it goes with wrap. Like once a movie is done being physically filmed, the job still isn't done. And so you have the production who handles wrap. And this will happen immediately once they are finished filming. And we even start preparing for wrap, you know, like a week or two before, just so we can have everything ready. So it's a lot of same things that we did in prep, but now it's the reverse. So when we had to get people rental cars, now it's making sure that we get the keys to return the rental cars. Sometimes we hope that people have taken care of them. But if not, then, you know, sometimes that means we have to go get them cleaned, and we have to get them vacuumed out, make sure all of their belongings are out of it to return them. Once they're done filming, we'll return like so I don't want to get too much into this, but some crew members will have like a kit. So, you know, like they'll bring things, hair, makeup, will bring a lot of their own stuff. So sometimes it's our most of the time, it's our responsibility to ship all of that stuff back to whether that's their home or it could be to their new job. So we've got to get the crew members back their belongings. We also have to return gear. So like how it was our job to receive the gear, send it out to set. Now it's our job to get that gear and return it back to those vendors or wherever the gear came from. We talked a lot about, I don't think we mentioned, but there's a lot of paperwork, you know, when they talk about call sheets and distro. So we have to keep all of that organized where we're filming, because once we are in wrap, like Heather said, if there's a studio involved, or if there's just a production company, then that information needs to go to them. And it also needs to be uploaded onto our like Dropbox or Synchronize, whatever online kind of file storage system that the production is using. It needs to be organized onto there. And that is being handled throughout filming. But once you're in prep, you need to make sure that it's all there. You know, you need to make sure you have everything. It needs to be executed, which means it needs to be looked over, approved, and signed by the UPMs. And it needs to be named correctly. You need to have every day there of shooting. And also some physical files will be shipped again to the studio or the production company. So preparing those, making sure you have those boxes. Let's see, again, I talked about having fully executed PRs and Gs. And later on, if you guys are interested, you'll learn what those things mean, a PR and a G. But making sure we have those. Also, we'll have to return, our furniture. We'll have to return printers, water coolers if we got it, fridges if we got it and it didn't belong to that space. We have to organize and return all of that. And that also means closing out any business that we had with vendors. So, whoever we got the water cooler from or our shred bins, we've got to make sure that we call them and say, hey, we need a pickup done. We're closing out our account because movie's done, production isn't going to be here anymore. Also, one thing that we didn't mention, but like FedEx or UPS pickups, sometimes productions will always have those scheduled every day. And so towards wrap, again, that's making sure we call those companies and say our last pickup will be on, this day, this will be it for us, and making sure that is closed out as well. We have a ton of office supplies left over. So sometimes if we didn't use it and we can return it, we will. But a lot of times, sometimes you'll sell them to other crew members, or if you know of other movies that are coming into town, or, like in Syracuse isn't too far from us, we'll sell them to them. Also, same thing with lamps and different furniture. If we didn't get it from a company where it can be returned, or if we can't return it to the store, we'll also try to sell that as well. But essentially, like you're starting up a business and then you're closing a business. So everything that you brought into that new space, it essentially has to, it has to be gone. So you have to get rid of it. let's see what else. Also with wrap, depending on the size of the film, sometimes if it's a really small film, you have a week of wrap, but it typically can go to 4 to 5 weeks. And if you have a huge movie like, you know, Avengers or something like that, it can even go longer, but standard is about, you know, 2 to 4 weeks for a movie. I'm trying to think, Heather, Robin, did I forget any major thing during wrap?
I don't think so. I think that's pretty good. I was just going to talk a little bit about post-production. So just kind of going, you know, adding on to Jazlyn. So as she said, you know, we should have to, all that paperwork that we've gathered that whole time, we then have to send it off. So that could be to a studio, just a post-production house. And when we say studio, we mean something like Sony, Paramount. Those are usually associated with major movies or television shows, something like HBO, whatever. So we have to send all that stuff off to them digitally and physically. And then after that, you know, the coordinators will usually continue to work remotely for about a week or two, same with the UPM. And then there's a post team that takes over and handles everything from there. The reason we have to keep everything like this is because I don't know if some of you are familiar with the tax credit, but that's basically why TV shows and movies want to film in New York State, is because we have a tax credit. And so every television show, movie, they're going to get audited. And so the reason it's so important to stay so organized throughout the entire production from beginning to end is because when they get audited, they need all that information, and that is how they qualify for the tax credit. So everything we do kind of goes back to that. But yeah, just so you guys understand that. So we're gonna move on now to the actual positions in the office. Real quickly before we get into it, I just wanna mention, obviously we're in a pandemic right now. And there are some things right now that our unions and studios and insurance companies are currently in discussion about. For the most part right now, the you know, production world is kind of shut down while we're you know, waiting to come to an agreement about certain things that take place. So just keep that in mind as we're going through things. Some of these things might change because of, you know, COVID. There might be new things, but just keep that in mind as if you hear something, you're like, oh, is that everything is kind of up in the air right now? We're hoping to know soon, but I just wanted to mention that.
If it's okay, I will say I am back working now, and I won't get into it because I know with union stuff, but on a basic level, I can just add a couple things that are changed a little bit that
Sure, yeah,
that they are doing now that they didn't do before.
Yes, that would be great to hear a little bit of your perspective. Jazlyn, do you want to take it away with getting with office PAs? Yeah.
Okay, so office PAs it's production assistant, and that is the entry level for, you know, getting into the film industry. And you'll hear about this more, but there are PAs for almost every department, but we are going to be specific on office PAs. And so some of the things that the PAs do is essentially it's entry level. So you're supporting the coordinator, the assistant coordinator, the secretary. So I'm going to give you guys a list of things, but essentially you're just doing like kind of whatever they need you to do. You just have to be there to help them to move fast. You got to think quick. You got to be on your toes. It's very important. And aside from like skills and actual job, if I can just be honest, that's one of the most important things I think as a PA and just working in this industry is it is very fast paced. And I just like to tell people that before they get into it, because you have to really, you know, think fast, think on your feet. It can be overwhelming. So you just got to be able to keep up with it and learn and adapt that things are going to change and tasks might change, but you just got to keep up with it and keep going and, you know, communicate effectively if you're getting overwhelmed, but kind of keep going. So as we talked about before in prep, we set up offices. PAs will help do that. They'll help bring in the actual, you know, tables and chairs. They'll help bring those in, set them up in the offices. You know, before it's about keeping the office organized. So, you know, making sure that there's not paper laying around and making sure that things look neat in the office supplies, you know, is fully stocked up, making sure they're paying attention to, are we low on paper? You never want to, two things, don't run out of coffee and do not run out of paper. Don't, you know, it's a big no-no. So Film industry people love coffee, and you always need paper. So PA should always keep track of those two things, making sure there's coffee and making sure we're not low on paper. Because, you know, how are you going to print? So making sure we have office supplies, pens, paper. It's also sometimes the secretary will actually order supplies depending on how they do it. But PAs will, you know, if they need to run out to the office supply store, Walmart, whatever, they'll actually go out on runs to pick these things up. One thing about PAs that is different, besides a lot of things with the coordinator secretary, is secretaries and coordinators, those people never leave the office. They're always there. They don't really get to see the light of day. But with PAs, you are constantly, you know, making runs and stuff. You have to be the one that needs to go out if something needs to be picked up. If transpo isn't able to deliver something to set or whatever, it's the PA's job to take what's from the office to set or pick something up from set to the office. So PAs do go on a ton of different runs. Like I said, keeping track of office supplies that are needed, make a ton of runs to different stores, whatever we need. Heather talked about things at the last minute changed, or the camera department or somebody decided, oh guys, I actually forgot we need this to film today and we don't have it. And so, you know, if we can source it locally, it's our job to find it and then go pick it up and deliver it to them. We'll make we'll make runs. Let's see, you need to have proper phone etiquette. You will be on the phone a lot. So you have to get comfortable with, you know, answering, being on the phone. A lot of things you don't say or you don't give information, but just, you know, understand that you'll be on the phone a lot. Obviously every phone is different. There will be office phones. So you'll learn how to transfer and conference and all that stuff, but just have basic proper phone etiquette. Robin mentioned making signs. A PA will do this a lot. They'll be responsible for, you know, making different signs, whether that's for, you know, coordinators, they'll make office signs, whether that's having the printer information on it with the IP address. They're responsible for that, whether that's a sign above the sink that says, please wash your dishes. You know, just different things like that, or saying this way to the production office, or, you know, they'll do that kind of stuff, making different labels. If we have like a FedEx or UPS account, you know, the PAs will usually make the different labels that people need. One of the things that sometimes PAs will get to do, and this is dependent on if the coordinator will allow them to do it, or if they only want to do it, or if they have the secretary. Sometimes the PAs will get to do check requests or POs, which are purchase orders. But even if they don't allow them to write them out themselves, typically they are responsible for making sure they're scanned and online, which is onto our online filing system, and just making sure they're labeled correctly. You know, again, uploading, organizing, naming all of our files, that all needs to be done. Like Heather said, keeping all of our paperwork organized, whether that's a physical filing system, we usually have both, and an online filing system. Another thing is if you're giving a company credit card and you're going out making purchases on behalf of the company, you will have to organize those receipts. Typically, one thing you do is you'll tape them onto regular paper, turn them into accounting. So that's keeping track of that. Sometimes the coordinator or the assistant coordinator will have you handle their receipts and their card. So you'll have to reconcile those and make sure those are all handled and turned into accounting when they need them. But yeah, I mean, before COVID, a PA's job in the office was responsible for sending out a lunch email, also going out to pick up lunch and delivering it. Again, with COVID, those things are changing, but that is what has been going on for plenty of years. After COVID, things are still changing. Also with Crafty, you see it a lot on set, but in the office, we also have a ton of food and ton of snacks. And before COVID, it was PA's job to go out to the store, whether that's, you know, Walmart or Wegmans, wherever, I think BJ's, and picking up all of this food to have into the office, drinks so that people can have it, and making sure that it's organized. Like Heather said, things are changing because of COVID and, you know, germs and touching. But that is a big thing that PAs were supposed to do, is just making sure that there's coffee and snacks and people are getting their lunches, and, you know, making sure all of that stuff is organized. And again, just supporting the secretary and the coordinators and going on runs and, you know, just kind of keeping up with everything. Yeah, did I get it?
Yes, that's good. That's good. Robin, you want to go for a production secretary?
Yes. Okay, so the production secretary, like I said, on Quiet Place, I worked my way up from office PA to production secretary. So it's like the next step up after office production assistant. And the production secretary is responsible for the distribution that we talked about. So with the call sheet, if you're not familiar with what a call sheet is, it lists the call time, which means the time that everybody is supposed to be reporting to set no later than. It lists the names of every single person in all their departments and the time, their individual times that they need to be there no later than. It lists all this other information like props that are needed for the day and vehicles that are needed for the day and every single thing you can think of. So if people don't receive that, they are not going to have the information that they need to perform their job and get there on time. So sending out the call sheet is a really big responsibility of the production secretary, which means the production secretary is responsible for having every single person on the crew's email. If there's somebody that's coming in and working as a day player for a few days, you need to make sure you get their information so they can get the call sheet email as well. Even if you have crew like cast, you're not probably going to be responsible for getting those yourself. Those are probably going to be provided to you by the coordinator, but you need to make sure that they're copied on the email, that if there's a studio, their representatives are copied on the email. So it's a lot of responsibility and making sure that the communication is effective and nobody is missing from that list. In addition to the call sheet, you will also be responsible for sending out, like if there's any new script changes, if there's any new schedule changes, if there's a crew list that has everybody's information on it, because sometimes different departments need to get a hold of each other. That way they have their phone numbers and their email addresses, and any other memos that come up, because sometimes there's something that just comes up that day and it's last minute. Like we said, it's fast paced. There's a lot of last minute things and you need to send out a message or a reminder that needs to get everyone, like if they're going on a location scout, which means there are some people getting on a bus and they're going to go check out the locations that they're going to be filming at, and they need to find out something before that scout. You have to make sure that you have all their email addresses so you can blast that information out to them so they get it sent to them immediately. And they're like, okay, we've been updated, we can go on with our day. Another big part of it is what Jazlyn talked about with being an office PA, which is answering the phone and figuring out how to transfer calls. I know I was not familiar with that when I started, and a lot of people were very willing to help me learn about that, because that is a very important part of the job. Because most of the time when people are calling, they're not calling to speak to the office PA or to the production secretary. They're calling to speak to somebody in a different department that's in the office. They're calling to talk to the coordinator. So your job is to answer the phone and say, hi, this is production. Who do you need to talk to, pretty much? And then you got to send them their way. But that is the secretary and the office PA's responsibilities. Communicating with vendors via either, whether it's phone calls or emails, can sometimes be a big part of being the secretary. I know from my personal experience, I've developed a lot of relationships with vendors, whether it be with the furniture rentals or with the office supplies. So just staying in contact with them, because as you're going through a show, especially with office supplies, you'll establish a relationship with a company and then you'll say, okay, we need this stuff for this week, this stuff for this week. And so on from there. What else? Okay, and then the crew list, like I mentioned, that document that's sent out to everyone with everybody's email addresses and phone numbers, that is usually generated by the production secretary. So as people are being hired, the coordinator is sending over their information to the secretary to compile this large document, which can sometimes be like 13 pages long, of everybody's information to make sure that everybody can stay in contact with one another. Sometimes if it's a smaller movie, they may be responsible for creating the cast list, but normally that's generated by a casting company if there is one. And the vendor list is a list that the secretary generates based on all of the companies and vendors that you've worked with. So they have this document that they can send to other productions or even bring on to other productions themselves. Like if there's a production coming in from New York City into Buffalo and they're not really familiar with local vendors, we can just pass this list along to them and they will have all that information, and down to the people's contact names that you've been dealing with at that company. Let me just double check to make sure that that's everything. But yeah, the biggest responsibility of the secretary is making sure that they have everyone's information that's going to be on for that day so they can send them all of the documents that they need in order to perform their job effectively.
Okay, so coordinators. So after you are a production secretary for at least a year, you can apply into the union to become a coordinator. So a coordinator is a union position. Most crew members are in a union. The biggest union is called IATSE. There's also SAG, which is the actors, the DGA, which is the Directors Guild, covers the ADs, the director, the UPM, and there's also the Transpo, Transportation Union, which covers Transpo drivers. But we're in IATSE, and we're specifically in Local 161, which also handles script supervisors and accountants. So once you're a secretary for a year, you can apply to join the union. There are fees to join the union, there's quarterly dues, but there's of course a lot of benefits to being in the union. And so within the union, there's 3 different coordinating positions. So the first one that I'll discuss is a travel coordinator. So a travel coordinator is not always hired on a job. It really depends on the size of the job and how much travel is involved on that job. If you're talking a major film or a big television show, there's probably going to be a travel coordinator. On smaller indies, there's not always one. That travel work will instead be handled by either the secretary or the assistant coordinator or production coordinator. But basically, when there is a travel coordinator, they handle all travel for cast and crew. They take care of flights, hotels, vehicles, and there's a lot that's involved in that. So if somebody needs to travel in, they have to get, all of their information. They have to send them flight options. If they are cast, they have to go through their agents. They have to, pick their seats and, find a hotel that works for them. Same with the vehicle. And they also have to keep track of all of that information and log all of that information and do what's called a PO, which is a purchase order, which basically holds all of that information in our budget. So it's a lot of work. It's also a job that's essentially 24/7 because even on weekends, people are traveling in after hours. And so what we do, usually work with the travel agency, not always. The travel coordinator has to handle all of that communication. So again, on a bigger job, a travel coordinator is a huge necessity because travel is so many hours, it's full time, and sometimes it's just too much for the coordinator and assistant coordinator to handle. Next is the assistant coordinator. The assistant coordinator's job really depends on what the production coordinator handles. Their tasks are kind of interchangeable. So the assistant coordinator will do whatever task the production coordinator gives them to do. But typically the assistant coordinator deals more with vendors. They work with legal. So when we are opening accounts, there's contracts that have to be signed. We can't just sign them. We have to go through legal. If there's a studio involved, we have to also get approval from the studio, the UPMs, the producers. And so the assistant coordinator helps facilitate a lot of that information. The assistant coordinator almost always deals with the daily paperwork and fills out what's called a production report, which basically looks like a call sheet if you've ever seen a call sheet, except the only difference is it has the information from the previous day on it, what time somebody started, what time they ended. We have to calculate things like meal penalties, if there were any accidents, injuries, if we didn't make a shot, we didn't make our day. The assistant coordinator has to do all of that information and, keep track of all of it. And they also usually handle more of the distro than the production coordinator. So they're usually, sending out a lot of more of, call sheets, stuff like that, along with the secretary. And then the production coordinator typically will handle cast. So dealing with cast contracts, SAG paperwork, which is the actors union. They usually are the one that handle ordering equipment, Expendables, and the production coordinator also works directly with the UPM. Typically, only the coordinators will work with the UPM. If you're an office PA or secretary, you don't really work with the UPM or the producers as much. So, the coordinators are typically involved with more meetings, phone calls, whatever. The coordinator has to deal with more of that kind of stuff. On certain occasions, there are production supervisors, which are different than a production coordinator and also different than a UPM or production manager. They're kind of the middleman. jobs don't always hire production supervisors, mostly because they're not a union position. They're kind of just this unusual position that was created. They don't really belong anywhere, but sometimes you will see that position as well. And they just, again, kind of bridge the gap between the UPM and what's going on in the office. But if you ever see that, they are not the head of production. They're kind of like in between. And then finally, of course, we have the UPM or production manager if it's not a DGA job, and they oversee everybody. They deal with hiring crew. They deal with, approving contracts. Sometimes they deal with the budget as well. It depends if there's also a line producer, but they're in charge of, approving stuff. They also are, involved a lot with what's going on with the tax credit. They make everyone's deal. So when you get hired on a job, usually your department head, so as a PA, if you were hired as an office PA, the production coordinator would work out your deal for you, your contract. But the UPM has to approve all of those deals. So a department head, a grip, the DP, whatever, all of their deals have to go through the UPM, and the UPM has to negotiate all of those deals with everyone. So they're kind of like, not quite the CEO, but almost, because they still have to, the producers are essentially still above them, but they have to deal with all of that. So yeah, that's all of the positions. So as you can see, you can really, work your way up from being an office PA through to a coordinator. But everything that we all do is so essential. One can't function without the other. Like I, as the coordinator, cannot function without my office PAs. As I don't know if it was Robin or Jazlyn said, like as a coordinator, like I don't get to leave my desk at all. So I really rely on, my office PAs to, help facilitate things. So everybody is just as important. And we really do, I think, especially in Buffalo, we have worked really hard to have a really great team that works together, that we like each other, and, we try to create the best environment possible. So we're going to kind of start to close things up, and then we'll also do a Q&A. What we're going to do after this is, if you guys think that working in the production office is something that interests you, if you can just send us another email just saying that you would like to be involved in a training session. We're hoping right now it's looking like we're going to get back to work either end of August, beginning of September, with some indies coming through. So we'll definitely be needing people. So definitely send us an email if you are interested in knowing more and getting into a more in-depth, training session where we'll actually like go over what your actual tasks will be specific to you. And that way it'll kind of help speed things up, because as we said, it happens very fast. So we're trying really hard to give more opportunities to new people, because we are very tight knit, but we want to, help other people get into this industry. So let us know if you're interested in knowing more. There are a few requirements. Biggest thing is, as a PA, kind of across the board, whether you want to be a PA for wardrobe, the office, set, is you have to have a driver's license. You don't necessarily have to have your own car as long as you can get to work, but you do have to have a driver's license. You're often driving production vehicles. So that is one requirement. If you're working in the office, you have to have a laptop. Macs are preferred, but not necessary. If you have a PC, that's okay too, starting out. And again, it doesn't have to be your laptop. You just need to have a laptop with you at work. So if you're able to, borrow one if you don't have one, but that is something that is necessary, because we do a lot of computer work, obviously. And then another thing I want to mention is the hours that we work. I think this is the biggest misconception about what our industry is, that it's glamorous and it's so cool, and it is, but we work very long hours. So a 12-hour day is what you will, this is a standard, that is what you will at least work a day. Every single day you will work at least 12 hours. And I think a lot of people, they're like, yeah, I can do that. And then I see the look on their faces at the end of the first day, and they're just like, it's like they saw a ghost. So it's a big sacrifice. If you really want to work in this industry, there's going to be things you're going to have to give up, social events, things with your friends. You can't, when you commit to a job, so like a movie, for example, might be 4 months long, it could be 6 months long, it could be 9 months long. If it's a TV show, it could be even longer. that's a full-time commitment, and there's no sick days, there's no calling in, there's no, oh, well, I'm going to a concert, can I leave early? That doesn't happen. You have to be fully committed. So it, it can be at sometimes a sacrifice, and we don't want to not encourage people to work in this industry, but we also want you to understand what you're getting yourself into, because it is different than a typical job. And just because we work in the office doesn't mean we're working 9 to 5. We wish, but everybody is working, including on set, and you might work even longer hours. Actually, the office probably works less hours sometimes than some of the set PAs sometimes work 16-hour days. And that's just an industry standard, unfortunately. No matter where you go, that is what you're gonna have. So just keep that in mind, especially if you're a student. I know some of you are. I know specifically for me, I'll only be looking for people who have graduated, and that's only because of how much this takes. That's why, someone like Robin was an intern for so long, because she was finishing school, because this is just, you can't have homework to do. Because we can't be understanding, it just, you have to be fully committed, because, the hours are always changing. I might need you to work an overnight one day and then do that. It's just, you have to be able to be fully committed. So again, if you're still in school, be patient. We're always sometimes looking for interns. There'll always be opportunities. And if if you have a job, definitely don't just like quit your job, but, try to work something out, or, maybe if you have a job that can be understanding that you're going to have like a small leave of absence or something, but just something to keep in mind for anybody who's completely new to this industry, of what you're really going to get yourself into. And then what else?
Add something, Heather?
Yeah, definitely.
A part-time thing. I think that it's not like, oh, I can just go get a part-time job in the film industry. Now, like Heather talked about, you can be, this is separate, a day player, maybe you work once on set or something, but if you're trying to work in the office like we're talking about now, it's a full-time thing. Like she said, and typically it's Monday through Friday. You do usually have Saturdays and Sundays off, unless for some reason they need to film on a Saturday. But you still get Saturdays and Sundays off, but it is a full-time gig, 12-hour days minimum. But you can't just say, I'll work, 5 hours today and I'll work 6 hours tomorrow. It's full-time. You got to have full availability to do this.
Yeah, and you don't, especially as a PA, you don't fully get to decide your schedule. So if you're like, oh, but I'm a night person or I'm a morning person, it doesn't matter. You have to work where we need you. So again, just keep that in mind when you're getting involved or applying for jobs, to one, just be open-minded, but also know what you're jumping into, because it can be, I think, a big shock to some people. And sometimes within the first week, we'll see people kind of just drop out because they don't know, that is what is normal. And then I just wanted to just give you guys some just quick tips for getting hired, whether you want to be in the production office or another department. Just a couple of things that I see a lot of times that people are kind of doing wrong. So I just want to give you guys a couple of tips. One, so obviously, a lot of people will ask for resumes. If you guys aren't in the Buffalo Film group on Facebook, I really encourage you to find that group and add yourself into that group. It's a great place to see job postings. We almost always post a job posting in there. Like for this, I posted it in there. I know some of you guys came from, your professors, but you'll definitely always see jobs posted in there first. We always post there first before we're even reaching out to schools. So make sure you're in there. When you're sending your resume, make sure you send your resume as a PDF. This is probably the biggest thing that I see, is that people send it as a Word document. And if you don't know, if you send it as a Word document, then it's going to open it up in Microsoft Word. Then I have to convert it over to a PDF. And if I have to convert it over, then you've already basically been eliminated. Same thing with spell checking your emails, especially if you're applying for the office. First impression is everything. I don't know any of you, so just make sure you're taking the time. While this might be not a traditional industry, we're still a business and we're still professional. So just be mindful of that, and what you write to, whoever you're applying for, because, first impressions matter, and we see these things all the time. And the biggest thing that we see happen, is that people try to find people on social media. This is obviously, you know, we're in a new era now. It wasn't like this in the beginning, but now that everyone is on social media, what often happens is people try to find people, find a coordinator, find whoever, and they'll DM them. You will never get hired this way. Don't do that. Don't be that guy. It just will turn people off. Trust me, if you send in a nicely worded email with your resume, you can even follow, like if you need to follow up, you can follow up via email. We love that. Like, I love to see people who are following up and on top of things. But if you find me on Facebook and you message me, you're going to be like blacklisted. Like, don't do it. It's the worst thing ever that people do. And I'm all about the hustle, but you also have to understand that, you know, people, you know, you have to respect people's privacy and, you know where to send your stuff and where you're kind of like crossing a line. Definitely don't ever try to, like, this happens once in a while, but people try to get someone's phone number. That's like even worse. Or just like showing up to like a production office or set. Email is always the way to go. It's always the most professional thing to do. And we're always happy to, you know, pass along information and help people out, as long as you do it in a professional way. So we see that a lot. And as you guys are new, I don't want you to make the same mistakes. There are people who have literally like done like where you have to like call security on them. So don't be that like that. Because, you know, we don't want you to, especially if I feel like some people do it out of like a very, like, they're just very eager. You know, and I get it. One of my first jobs, I like just like walked up and asked for a job, but I don't encourage you to do that because I just got lucky. But that doesn't often happen. And then, yeah, like I said, if you are interested in specifically working in the office, just send us another email. If after this you're like, I don't want to work in the office, that's okay too. We will be, and Robin will get into this in a couple of minutes about another project that we have going on that will also be involved with other departments. So it's okay if you don't think the office is for you. It happens a lot. But if you are interested, we are looking for people, just to clarify, that want to work in the office, that want to work their way up in the office, that want to stay in the office, because like I said, you know, we already have an HBO show that wants to come here in January. We need people who want to work in the office and stay in the office, and who want to be trained and become coordinators one day and join the union and all of that stuff. So if that's something that you think a path you want to go on, please let us know, because those are the people we're looking for. And if not, that's okay. Like I said, we'll have more sessions for other departments soon. So if anybody has any questions, we will start answering those. I know there was a couple in the chat that I got sent. So one person that asked about PAs using their own vehicle. So just to clarify that, and Robin and Jazlyn, feel free to jump in at any time, but usually on a union film or television show, a production assistant is going to have, there's going to be a production vehicle. You won't drive your own car. It's pretty rare to drive your own vehicle. If you do, there's mileage forms you fill out and you'll get it reimbursed in your check. But like I said, normally you will have a production vehicle, which is why it's important to have a driver's license. You don't necessarily have to have your own vehicle if you take the bus to work, you walk to work, whatever, ride your bike. That's fine as long as you have a valid driver's license and you're just able to drive a production vehicle. Another question somebody asked about SAG. You can work in the office if you're in another union. I think you're allowed to join 3 unions as a production assistant. It's you're not in a union. You're not in a union until you become a coordinator. The dress code. One second, let me just make this out. The dress code, you want to look professional. A lot of people always ask that, what can I wear? You can definitely wear jeans. As a PA, you should, well, and in general in the office, you should wear closed-toed shoes. A lot of times you're picking things up, moving stuff around, so you don't want to wear like flip-flops or anything like that. My thing is, as long as you look professional, like if you can make leggings look professional, by all means, like be comfortable. You're going to be there for 12 hours. You know, as long as, like I said, as long as it's professional, but you don't have to wear like a suit and tie either. Like I typically wear like a blazer with like jeans or something, but whatever you're most comfortable in, as long as you look presentable.
But it is pretty casual too. Like you can wear
It is.
jeans and a regular t-shirt. Like
Oh yeah, everyone has their own style.
yeah, it's definitely specific on people's style, because some people will like look real cute, you know what I mean? Like look all done up.
Jazlyn's one of those people.
Not all the time. And then there's some people who, you know, like maybe I wanted to wear lipstick and cute earrings and, you know, I wanted to match. And then maybe tomorrow I'm like, no, I'm putting on a regular, you know, old t-shirt and a regular pair of jeans. So, but you never really see people really wear like heels or anything like that. I will say though that I've seen, and this is recently, a coordinator wear cute little like chunks. But again, she's not going on runs and picking up stuff.
She ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, she'll wear like little chunks, and then she'll wear like appropriate dresses though. They come to her knee. You'll see women with like sometimes accounting or whoever wear like long skirts and stuff. Again, for PAs, it's a bit different because they're going on a lot of runs, picking up stuff, moving stuff, so they more casual. But sometimes you'll see people wear like a cute, nice dress, and it's kind of the one thing I do like about it is you can wear your own style. You know, like it's definitely different. People have different color hair. You know, I had purple hair at one point, not blonde. You know, you can really piercings and stuff. Like it's not like, oh, you can't have dreads and you can't have a nose piercing. You can color your hair red tomorrow if you want. I don't care.
Yes. Okay, the next question, what if my goal is to work in the camera department? Should you start in the office? No, you should not work in the office at all. Like I said, we're only looking for people who want to work in the office. There's lots of opportunities to work as a camera PA on some smaller films. Like I said, make sure you join the Facebook group. That's where a lot of things are posted. But you should work your way up through the camera department if that's what your goal is.
A set PA.
Yeah. Will office PAs be hired as soon as the end of August? So we're just waiting on some COVID things to be sorted out, and that is kind of what we're waiting on to determine when the next movie is going to come in here. Right now it's looking like the end of August, beginning of September. Like I said, anybody who's interested, I will be in direct contact with. As far as, you know, we'll do formal interviews at some point. So definitely, you know, like I said, make sure you're in the right groups. You can get the right information. Make sure you send us another email if you are interested in working in the office so I can, you know, get in touch with you. But we're hoping it will be around there. Like I said, the unions and the insurance companies and the studios have a lot to, it's a big liability, COVID. So they have to all come to an agreement. And of course, we want there to be, you know, it to be a safe place. Just to give you an idea, it's like something that they're planning on is weekly testing for the entire crew. Some people will get tested daily. That's something Jazlyn's already been going through, getting a weekly, you know, COVID test. So it's, when we're going to go back, it's going to be very safe. You're going to have to wear a mask all day. So those are just things we're sussing out right now, just to make sure that we are creating a very, you know, we're making movies, but we're not curing cancer, you know, so we have to make sure it's a safe environment. The average income for a full-time PA. So it really depends on the production's budget. Sometimes PAs make minimum wage. Sometimes it's about, which I think is like $11.80 an hour. Sometimes it's more around $15 an hour. That's usually the most that I've seen. But you also have to keep in mind you're working 12 hours. So for example, I have to do math because I'm not, I just work in the office. I don't, you know, know math, but $11.80 an hour comes out to $165 a day, and $15 an hour, which is the other common thing I see, is $210 a day. So even if you have like an hourly pay, you're always going to at least get paid for 12 hours. And that's whether your coordinator lets you leave a half hour early or not, you will get paid for a 12-hour minimum. Because we're usually at least working 12 hours. So you more often hear like a day rate. So especially if you do any like day playing and like reality TV, they'll say something like, you know, $165 a day. That would come out to, you know, minimum wage. If you ever see a day rate posted, divide it by 14, that will actually give you the hourly rate. That is because after 8 hours, it goes into overtime. So if you ever see somebody post a day rate, divide it by 14, and that will tell you what the hourly rate is. So just make sure that you're always at least getting paid minimum wage for any productions that you guys are getting involved in. The Facebook group, I think it's just called Buffalo. Let me look it up real quick.
There. Robin put it, and then I put like a little link in there.
Oh, you did? Perfect. Thank you, guys. Buffalo Niagara Film Professionals. Yes. ADs and UPMs differ. So ADs and UPMs are very different. So ADs, there's a first AD, a second AD, and then a second. The first AD works solely with the director. The second AD plans the schedule, like the call sheets, and they also coordinate things with cast. And then the second AD works exclusively with background. The UPM is the head of production, so they're dealing with everything with production, like I said, hiring, approving budgets, equipment, everything day to day. They're dealing with everything. So the ADs are very specific, have very specific duties, where the UPM is very broad. And like I said, the UPM's in charge of everyone. If you start in the office, can you change departments if there's another opportunity you'd like to be better in? Like I said, I encourage you to only work in the office if you want to work in the office, just because it is, you know, it's a lot of work, and it's not, the office isn't a stepping stone. It's, you know, it's a certain path. If there's another department you want to be in, I definitely would encourage you to start in that department. Like Jazlyn mentioned earlier, every department, almost every department has a PA. So you just have to, you're already, you know, ahead of the game, that we have your contact info, and we're more than happy to pass along your information to the correct department. We would much rather do that than have you work in the office and secretly wanting to work in wardrobe and then leave us after we train you for like a year, you know? So, of course, if you change your mind, that happens too. Some people will work in the office and after a job be like, you know what, this is not for me. Of course, that's okay and understandable. But of course, we're looking for people who want to work in the office. What programs or apps do we recommend for working in the office? Microsoft Word is a big one that we use. I know a lot of people learn Google Sheets now, but I'm old school. I like Microsoft Word, Excel. So you do have to have that on your computer. It's, I think the subscription is $7.99 or I think $70 annually. We use Dropbox, Google Drive, different programs like that. Sometimes you can use like Pages, but a lot of the documents are like Excel and Word documents that you'll use. So it's definitely, you know, important to have those on your computer. If you're done working on a project, are you still doing some type of office work, or are you essentially done with working until you're signed on to another project? So working in the industry is entirely freelance. So once you're done, you're done. As a PA, you'll come on sometime during prep and then you'll end sometime during wrap. Really only the production coordinator will kind of start a little earlier than everyone else, and same thing with after everyone else. The great thing about working in the office is you work a lot longer than most departments. So for example, a camera assistant is only going to work during filming, where is when you work in the office, you're going to work, you know, 6 to 12 weeks before you even start filming. And then, you know, you could be working 4 weeks after wrapping. So it's a much longer job. But once you finish a project, you finish one and then you go to something else. It's entirely freelance. Do we ever see third or fourth ADs? No, that is not a position. In Canada, they don't have seconds. They call them third ADs, or the third, but that's not a position. After second, there's a key PA, and then there's the set PAs. Does anyone else have any questions? You can also speak, if you want to talk a lot, you can do that as well. You just have to unmute yourself. Anyone?
Oh, once,
Okay.
twice.
I know.
How about, I was gonna say, how about those of us like that do have experience? Because I've been doing, you know, like television and film for about 6 years, but mostly based out of New York. Are you looking for like to start them off as like maybe a travel coordinator or secretary, or are you expecting them, you know, as a PA?
No, I mean, it definitely depends on your experience. If you already have office experience, especially if you have production secretary experience, certainly we could look at hiring you as, you know, like a travel coordinator or secretary. We're definitely looking, you know, for people who want to grow and move up, because we can't just have a bunch of PAs. We are going to need to have production secretaries and more coordinators. So it definitely depends on experience. So yeah, so no, it definitely, I know I think we have your resume already, but yeah, no, definitely if you have experience already, then there's definitely opportunities for more. It might not necessarily happen on the next one. So if you're looking to work and you have experience, I always say, and I know like Robin has done this, the same with Jazlyn, sometimes even I myself have taken jobs in a lower position just to kind of like get your foot in the door with the community. And then on the next one, you kind of move up. So if you're open to other, PA work, definitely take it as it comes, but certainly we are also looking for people in higher positions as well. What are the departments that need positions filled? I mean, on every movie or show, there's all departments need positions filled. Right now, we're focusing on the production office, mostly because the production office starts working before everyone else. So, but like I said, there will be opportunities for future Zooms and classes for other departments, and as well as, we'll post those jobs on the Facebook group as they come in. But right now we're just focusing on the production office. Anyone else? No? Okay, cool. So like I said, if you're interested in working in the production office, if you can email the Buffalo Film Network at gmail.com just to let us know. We're hoping to get a training session in before the next movie, just so that we can kind of have a little foot in the door before you get started and get the rundown. And then obviously I'll be doing formal interviews as well. If you're not, that's okay. Just be on the lookout for the job postings and future Zooms. I'm going to turn it over to Robin, who will talk a little bit about the film network, just so that you guys who are interested in other departments are aware of what's going on here locally.
Cool. So I am in the process of working with my team at Lightwork Media Buffalo. I'm also a member of a freelance media team. And we are working on this initiative called the Film Neighbor Network, where we have professionals that we know, not even necessarily local to Buffalo, since it would all be did like over Zoom and virtual, just share their experiences, kind of what we did today about us working in the production office and the specific jobs and what the jobs entail. But we would be focusing on a different department for each Zoom. So like this Zoom focused on working in the production office and all those positions, but 1 week we would do a camera department one week we would do an assistant director's one week we would do a wardrobe one. And we would have people that work in those departments and have been actively working in those departments for years. The idea that we have right now is them kind of self-tape themselves, so we can assemble a little general video so they can share what their job entails for everybody to check out before enrolling in the Zoom. But we're still kind of working that out right now, just because everybody is busy with their own things. So we don't know if we're going to be getting videos from everyone. But the idea is that after people tune in and check out that video, they're like, okay, this is something that I want to learn more about. I'm going to sign up for the Zoom that would be happening either at the end of that week or 2 weeks after that. And then everyone would kind of join on like this. And then 2, 3, maybe a few more people that are professionals in that department would share their knowledge and share advice on how to get more involved and get in as a PA, because there's like a wardrobe PA, there's Zet PA, there's all these other PAs that we can't share our experience on because we just haven't worked those jobs. So it's just the idea of what we did today, but with individualized departments. So we're still figuring out how we're going to be going about that with releasing those general interest videos. But definitely stay tuned, because I know some people already had questions about working as an AD or working in the camera department. We are in the process of getting in touch with those professionals that we are familiar with to get them on board to this initiative. So just be on the lookout, because once we have everything figured out, we will be posting on that Facebook page. We will probably be sending out an email through the Buffalo Film Network email that you reached out to for this. And yeah, we will just keep you guys updated, because I think this is a really great way to share information that you can't really just find with the Google search. I would have loved to have something like this when I was getting involved, because I went in completely unaware of how to do my job. And it's like, that's okay. Like, there is no handbook or anything. So I think the most effective way to learn is from other people sharing their experiences, sharing their mistakes, sharing their outlook and everything that they've learned. So definitely stay tuned.
Thank you, Robin. And then Jazlyn, just real quick, if you want to talk about your podcasts, if any people are interested in listening.
So yes, so about 2 years ago in 2018, I created a podcast called Crew Only, which is about like TV and film crew members. And so the reason why I started was because I felt like I had no idea that all of these positions existed on a movie. I had no idea that, people did this. You only ever hear about like actors and directors and maybe the camera person, but like she talked about, you have different people in a camera department. It's not just the one person. You have grip and electric and hair and makeup and transpo. And so I was like, these people deserve to kind of be heard, and people need to know what they're doing, because it's a collective thing. It's not just one person making a movie. And so I'll put the link in the chat, but basically the podcast is about talking to all of these different individuals who work in different departments and different positions within those departments, to talk about what they actually do on a film set. I even asked them how much money they make, what unions they're in. So they really share like what a typical day is like on set. And so I talk to people in, wardrobe and grip and electric, and casting and production. And so I've spoken to a lot of people in various departments and set deck and art, to just really talk about what they want to do. So, if you guys are interested, you could even listen to that and look and see what departments are on there and hear from a person firsthand of like, oh, this is what they did on set, and say like, oh, I think I would like to do something like that. So I'm going to put the link for you guys, but again, it's called Crew Only, and, it's on like Apple Podcasts or Spotify or, Google Podcasts. You guys can kind of find it everywhere. But again, it's really the same thing, giving you guys information firsthand from the people who are making movies about what they do on set within the different positions.
Awesome. We'll wrap it up then with that. Thank you guys so much for joining in. It's like I said, it's so nice to see so many people interested. Again, if you are interested in working in the production office, please be sure to send us an email so that we can get in touch with you, and make sure you're in the Buffalo Film Facebook group so you can get more information. And yeah, we will be in touch with you guys. And I'm excited to meet some new people and see you guys on our film set. So with that, we will end it here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Welcome.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Welcome.